Hey guys, welcome back, it's Meg. Today we're going to be doing a VoD review for a 22 Tyrannical Sanguine Depths. So even on a Tyrannical week, this is still a pretty big pull. We don't usually end up pulling that 3-pack or the Brute, and it's mainly just because it's kind of a lot to manage going into the urn. You do end up dying here to dread shots. You were the only one that was targeted by them, and it's super unfortunate, but that's kind of just what happens when you have a pull this size. So running back here, you went ahead and sent Revival. I would have probably just sent Fallen Order first and thrown some Hots up on them, using your Gust of Mist that we get out of it. Probably would have been a better bet given that it's a bursting week and you don't want to end up losing people. Especially with a pull this size, because you guys did do the extra 2 packs into this, I probably would have held on to Revival just to take care of those, or at least half of them, because the warrior ends up dying here to bursting and a thrust. He would have been fine with the bursting stacks, but then you get a 4 stack here, and it gets pretty scary with those animated weapons going out because the threat on those is loose. I think that's what happened to the DH there. I think the warrior dies here to another Mist Dancer. It got a little bit crazy trying to gather everything up, and that's just one of the reasons why we don't do quite so much. That wasn't your fault, obviously, like them standing and stuff you can't do anything about, but I would really recommend holding on to Revival and try and top the 2 people just organically, and then sending Revival for the bursting stacks toward the end. You guys do have a melee heavy comp, and it is also a volcanic week, so it's going to be a little bit rough in terms of that, so people will probably be getting hit by more frontals, or kicks may be going off, getting volcanoed out of range of their mob, things like that. So on a week like this, or like a storming week with a melee heavy comp, you are at a small disadvantage just because things are a little bit more inconsistent. It might not be so much of an issue on a 22, but with 1 tick and Veruth, I do like to send Fallen Order almost immediately, or Crane almost immediately, and then Fallen Order after, or vice versa, whichever one I end up sending first. You'll have it up by the time you need it on the boss if you sent Crane here, at least for the charge that you end up using Crane for in the first place. So I'd recommend using it here just to get it on cooldown, because that's the nice part about Fallen Order, is that it's pretty much always up, at least at 9.5. So you did use Cocoon here just because you accidentally taunted. That was probably the safe bet, and then I would have just gone ahead and topped myself just in case that you did get that next carnage after the fact, and you want to make sure that you are taking advantage of the fact that you get extra hot healing out of Cocoon while it is active. Given that you guys already pulled Veruth and a tick in that prior room, you probably won't have Crane until the mid to the end of the fight of this next boss coming up here, which is fine because that's usually when it's used anyway after Fallen Order. But it's just something to keep in mind. If you guys do a different route, you might have a little bit of different timings on Chi-Ji. I think I would have opted to send Fallen Order here instead of Chi-Ji, just because you're not really going to be doing a lot of healing. All of the healing is going to be single target on your tank, and then bursting as you start to kill them off, and then the ticks blowing up as that's their mechanic, as those finally start to die off. So I think that using Revival here was good. You're going to be a little bit longer on it on the boss at this point. But I think that I definitely would have sent Fallen Order instead of Crane there, because Crane had also fallen off by the time that the damage was actually starting to go out. He kind of got slapped there. There wasn't really much that you could have done about that. I don't know if he didn't have a cooldown up or something. I don't really know what would have caused him to get hit for 60, 50k like he did there, but you guys did send Lust, so this boss is going to be a little bit harder now just because you don't have that Lust. So that's really going to come down to mana management and your cooldown usage. Something super minor that I would recommend is just popping Fallen Order right before you get knocked back. Just because they are AI, it takes them a second to kind of get going. So by the time that they actually start healing, chances are you will have started soaking, so then they'll actually do a little bit more of effective healing, rather than them just standing there and you're waiting for them to do something. Right here you send Revival and then you Essence Font. That's a super easy fix, just flip-flop those. Since I think 9.1 it was, we got Gusts implemented into Revival. So when you are going to be sending Revival, when you know you have that planned out, you're definitely going to want to Essence Font before you end up actually pushing Revival. It's pretty safe to say that before any of Mistweaver's cooldowns, whether it's Fallen Order, Revival, or Chi-Ji, you can just send Essence Font before it, because you're going to benefit from Gusts anyway, and you also want that hot rolling, and you don't want to be losing uptime on things like Crane when you are channeling Essence Font. For the Severing Smash that I pop Crane for, I drop my Transcendence in melee and then I don't run as far. I drop it maybe like a roll distance out with a couple steps after that, just so you can actually get full value out of Crane. You can ask the range to do it, but I still prefer to do it myself, to be completely honest, because I know when I'm going to be sending my blackout stacks and when I'm going to be getting those gusts versus they don't really know how it works. Going into this next smash here in about 5 seconds, you do have your renewings out, but 2 of them are going to expire and you don't reapply them. For this boss specifically, on Tyrian, I would absolutely make sure that you are having all of your renewings out before the smash goes off, just because sometimes people get knocked into others' orbs and you want to just be able to plant and spam Vivify if you have to, while still being mana efficient and cleaving up the rest of your group. So what ended up happening right there is he intervened the tank. That's what ended up killing him. So he took that tank buster. There wasn't really anything you could have done about it. That's not something that I don't think that was intentional, but that one is not on you at all. On this soak, you guys end up soaking quite a few of them, and then you immediately get the charge. For you personally, I would have pops diffuse while those were being soaked, so that when you get targeted by this charge, it's not quite as scary, just because you would have been a little bit higher health from the soak phase initially. I'm having kind of a hard time seeing what happened to the warrior here. If I had to take a guess, I would assume he got knocked up by a volcanic and then landed in that craggy fracture, in which case there's not really much you could do about it. He also could have been getting assaulted by the bolts. You can use Ring to stop some of the casts. I usually save them for curses if we have a comp that only has like one decurse. But if in a situation like that, you could also use it to stop the bolts. You do get a rack soul applied here. You can diffuse it off and it will actually do damage. This is where most of the damage outside of spinning crane kick comes from in Sanguine Depths, is being able to reflect those debuffs back onto the mob. So I'd recommend, in my guide I actually do have a chart of things that you can diffuse back onto mobs for damage. Any type of magic will be removed when you diffuse, but not everything will technically reflect. This is one of those cool things that we actually get to use. I normally end up sending Fallen Order on Sagadon just because it's going to be up by the time that you need it again anyway. It is a super short cooldown, so anytime you're going to have to do a lot of group-wide healing, it's pretty safe to assume that you can just send that cooldown. On this pull, I'd also encourage you to make sure that you have Crane for it, just because, especially on fortified weeks, it makes this pull a lot easier, because if you send Crane first with this Grand Overseer when he does the Dread Bindings, you don't have to leave melee and you won't take the damage from it because of Crane's anti-root properties. You get to just hang out in melee. You can Tiger's Lust someone else. With your comp, you do have a lot of melee, so that would be something to kind of look for in the future. Icar is alright. I would recommend taking the haste power or the champion's brand over that, just because when you take the hubris, utter hubris, you do actually end up getting benefit for your healing spells as well as your DPS spells, because you can get more spinning crane kicks, you get faster vivifies with that haste, but you don't have to rely on procs. And a lot of the time the Icar actually does mostly overhealing and the damage is pretty minimal. You want to make sure that you're sending Essence Font before Fallen Order, just because you want that hot out so that you can get those extra resets, because that's going to be your biggest reset gatherer in Mythic Plus. Right there, it looks like both of the melee got hit by Seed. Maybe even the mage. And there's also that fiery cantrip in the back there it is casting. That does do quite a bit of damage even on Tyrannical Weeks. You guys went into this with 6 stacks of Urn, and you're kind of blasting the ads, so you're not really taking that much damage where you would warrant a Fallen Order cast. I probably would have sent it on like the first or second one anyway though, just because you're going to want to get it on cooldown and get that use out of it. You do a good job here of keeping your renewing spread and keeping them refreshed with RSK, so you do a good job there on spreading that for the Vivify Cleave. Right here again you get the 2 stacks of the Rack Soul, so you're able actually to diffuse those and you can get a lot of damage out of it. I definitely would have done that instead of dispelling myself and then just dispel the other person with the 2 stacks. In this case this is a Demon Hunter. I would actually take the Satchel of the Hunt for this dungeon just because it helps on the last boss. It helps your group just be able to walk out of the bleed. While you're collecting here, you can go ahead and throw out an essence font right before you plan to use your Fallen Order. That'll just help with the movement, not being able to stand and cast, things like that, and you also get the added benefit of the CDR going out. Pretty much anytime you're going to be casting either Fallen Order or Revival or GG, you can go ahead and send out a Essence Font beforehand, especially if there's going to be a lot of movement like you do when you go around and collect the orbs. So pretty much every intermission phase here where we're collecting, you can go ahead and just Essence Font. Looks like the mage only grabbed like 1 or 2. That's not enough on a tyrant, and I think that you guys had said that in comms, that he had not grabbed enough, so that's not really anything you can do. It's not really worth sending cooldowns on him when he could just grab more. Your main concern in the Gauntlet area is just mana conservation, so I see you have Mana Tea running, but without Revival here I would have sent Fallen Order a little bit earlier just to take care of some of those bursting stacks. You've been sitting on Fallen for I think like 2 minutes now, and then you don't end up actually using it until the boss. So for the future, I'd recommend sending it more in this area. You can get about one every pack, or if not every other pack, just because it's up so frequently. And there's a good amount of ads to hit here, as well as the healing reduction that you get on it. It'll save you a lot of mana in the long run, and then you do actually get a little bit of damage out of it as well. On this boss, you can dodge the Wicked Rush by either transcending or walking out of it if you took Satchel from Oros, or by rolling, or Torpedo. I wouldn't recommend having Torpedo, but by rolling or with Tiger's Lust or things like that. There's a lot of ways to avoid it. A lot of the times it's worth it just to eat it with a defensive on hierarchies, because you don't want to actually get hit by the beams and by the Wicked Gash, so you want to play a little risk-reward game on how easy it is to dodge it versus any defensives that you might have up available for it. So the most dangerous part of that bleed right there is that you are going to have the initial hit and then you're not going to be able to cast for a couple of seconds. So that was kind of an unfortunate situation on the beams, but it's worth placing a Transcendence in the same spot every time. I always put mine towards the door or in the back right corner as you are facing towards the entrance, just to have a safe spot to go, just in case something like that does happen. You don't actually end up dying for it because you can just kind of teleport to safety. Alright, and just as a little overview, I would just try to work on casting more essence fonts before your cooldowns start, and try to get the usage on Fallen Order up. Other than that, I hope that this was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.